Welcome to Round Round.
Hello and welcome to Rallan's Rant. I'm your host today. My name's Richie Allen, and today I'm joined by Brian O'Mara, a former professional rugby player, who's today here to give us some insights to a professional rugby player and talking us through how it all got started and the many highs and lows he experienced throughout his rugby journey. Anyway, to start it off,
More
Brian,
highs.
Brian, I must ask you, how are you anyway today?
I'm great, Richie. It's good to do this podcast, especially I suppose as so many Michael's players currently in the Leinster setup are hoping to become professional players. It's good to give them a bit of balance inside what the life for a professional rugby player actually really is like.
Yeah. And anyway, just to kick it all off, obviously I think it's very important we talk about where you started playing rugby and like where did you go to school and where did you end up living, and basically just tell us about your kind of rise up through school as a young lad.
Okay, I suppose same as everybody else, it's where you're born has an awful lot to do with it. I was born in Bishopstown in Cork, right next to a number of actually rugby and GA clubs. The rugby club is called Highfield,
okay,
and the GA club is called Bishopstown. And because my dad had a greater interest in rugby and played a bit himself, we joined there at the age of maybe, 6, same as most people. I wouldn't have a fair amount of recollection in the early days other than training on a cold wet Saturday morning, playing with an orange ball and getting Bovril soup or some sort of horrible soup after a training session.
Yeah.
But my abiding memory anyway of my early days playing with Highfield was my dad had a shocking set of grey hair. So every time I used to kick the touch and penalties, my dad used to run down 20 or 30 yards down the pitch and he'd put his hand up so I had to aim for him. Okay. Obviously I couldn't really miss him. If I missed touch then I was in for a bit of trouble. But there were great innocent days where we just loved watching rugby, and I suppose you go home then in the evening and watch the old Five Nations, and the excitement was just amazing. From there I went to Pres Rugby School, which is a famous institute in Cork. I was going to go to CBC because my father actually went to CBC. Pres and PBC are like Michael's and Blackrock. They absolutely hate each other. It's kind of weird. The reason I didn't want to go to CBC is they had a scrum half. And remember me now, this is the context, I'm 12 years of age, and they had a scrum half who I felt was a really good player. He had a massive pair of quads, he was really developed for his age. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to get ahead of him in CBC. Like, there was no such thing as pro rugby. But I was like, no, I'm going to PBC. Plus a lot of my old school friends were from Bishopstown were heading there as well, so it just seemed a natural progression.
Okay. And like at that stage, I know you were quite a young boy, but was it in the thought process of you that you were thinking, I want to be a pro rugby player, or was it just part of growing up?
You need to put yourself in the context of actually what was life back in I went to school around the mid-90s or early 90s. There was no such thing as professional rugby.
Yeah.
It just didn't exist. It was amateur. So when I went to PBC, we were really lucky. A bit like, I suppose, a lot of Michael's players of recent years. In my year group, we had so many players who went on to be future international rugby players. So first of all, we were coached by Declan Kidney. Obviously, he won Ireland the Grand Slam, won 2 Heineken Cups, was a brilliant coach, I suppose, looking back in hindsight. But we also had so many good players in those years, like Ronan O'Gara, Frankie Sheehan, Mick O'Driscoll. I was lucky enough to be part of it. There was Peter Stringer, who was a couple of years behind me. Anthony Horgan played for a lot for Munster and Leinster. So we were just in there like any other school team, enjoying it. We were very successful. I suppose my abiding memory, looking back originally, was my juniors cup year. I think I played out half and we didn't get past the first round. We played Munchins away from home, and in those days the try was worth 4 points, so hence we lost 4-0. We were 0-0 the last play of the game, and I got a kick blocked down and we lost 4-0. And I can remember the captain coming up to me after and was like, geez, you're a real loser, you're the person who's responsible for us losing this cup. And I was like, what a horrible leader, like, but it was a great motivation. I learned from it unbelievably well. Even when I was in second year at the time, because I was overage in my current year group. I think I trained with the seniors when I was the second year. Declan Kidney brought me up, not so much to be involved in the senior team, but because my class replicated the Rockwells from half past, and the seniors were playing them the following year. So I kind of got over that Junior Cup win fairly lively. And then we had some great years. I played in 3 Senior Cup finals. My abiding memory really is 100% is when I was in third year. I was lucky enough to be part of a winning Senior Cup year. Probably introduced me to drink at a far too early age as well, because I was hanging out with all the senior players. It was amazing. We beat the late great Anthony Foley's year, who played for Munchins. He was like the great captain of Munchins at that time. We beat them in Thomond Park in front of a huge crowd. You could imagine the excitement.
Yeah.
And then I won the next year as well, and then lost. Probably with the best team we had, we lost because we probably got a bit overconfident. But looking back, they were great years, and we're just so lucky to develop so many good players out of it.
True. And like, was there ever a stage when like you were going through and you were obviously playing rugby and obviously experiencing school life, but was there any particular moment where in school, or maybe just when you just left school, that you knew or you kind of had a realisation that you were perhaps good enough to be a pro rugby player?
No, absolutely not. First of all, I don't want to repeat myself, but there was no such thing as pro rugby. Like, pro rugby went only pro in 1995/96. I was still in school in like 93, 94, 95. So there was, you wouldn't even think about it. And plus, I would have just my mindset, it would never allowed me to think that I'm good enough to be a pro player. I wouldn't even let her into my head. I didn't suffer from massive bouts of doubt, but I always felt that if I taught like that, it would affect my performance. I would think that people would call you OTT, above your station. Like, it wasn't just, maybe it was a Munster background in it. They don't like to sing from the hymns or from, overly praised back there. So it would never have happened. Plus, I wouldn't have let it happen to myself. It was just almost kind of not fluke your way into it. It was just a gradual evolution where rugby was amateur, and then somebody flicked a switch and it was professional. What I would say was whether it was in school, whether it was in Corkon, whether it was with Leinster, whether it was Munster, I was lucky enough to be part of winning teams. And I think when you're part of winning cultures, it develops a bit of belief. So other than that, no, I wouldn't thought about it. Plus, I wouldn't let myself think like that. I had an awful lot of doubts, and if I ever thought like that, I'd soon get rid of it.
Okay. Well, then, just to kind of carry on the trend of what we're going at here is, I do think it is important to ask about the club game. And like, obviously, if you look at a young lad like myself and you look back at, say, the club game and back in your kind of generation, it seemed much more important. The standards seemed to be much higher, and you had professionals weekly playing, on a weekly basis playing club rugby. So basically what I'm trying to get out of you is that, like, how important was the club game?
Well, the club game, obviously, look, it was huge. And it wasn't because the standard was 50 times better. I'd say some of the standard was appalling. We used to play matches up in Limerick in a mud field where it was an absolute kick shit. And the standard wasn't that great. It was just the fact that it got exposure in the media. You'd have games on a Saturday, and whether you're playing in Duradoyle or up in Blackrock or St Mary's, they were live in RT, and you get 5, 6, 7,000 people at it. And it wasn't like today where the AIL is a young man's game. It was an old man's game. The club was your culture. It was your enjoyment. It was your social scene. So when I joined there, I was still in 6th year in school when I joined Corkon. I think I was subbing for the seniors when I was 6th year in school, and it was really eye-opener into what real life was like. It was hard-nosed, it was ruthless, training was vicious. It was just a great exposure to meeting people who went from work to the club. They had real lives, they had families, they were married, and you were out there socialising with them. And the unifying bond was rugby, the culture. After a match, we'd all be into the Blazers, we'd be in town, and then we'd be in Cork, say, on a Saturday night out. You'd have people from Dolphins Sunday as well, all in their Blazers, representing their teams. And you'd get to know the fraternity of rugby in Dublin or in Cork, and it was the same in Dublin. It was just, I suppose, it was brilliant just for your development as a person. There was fierce rivalries, there was wins, there was losses, and just after every club match, the bar would be packed. There'd be parents, family, friends. It was just a great social scene, and I look back now with great fondness that I don't sympathise with a lot of the current players, but clubs don't seem to have that spirit anymore, mainly because they don't get exposure. The AIL unfortunately is dying somewhat of a slow death, despite the fact that so many talented players do play it. Yeah,
true. And like, obviously initially the club game was huge for you, and then that also led to you finally getting recognition from Munster and them obviously signing you. And
well, there's a bit, just before I go into that, there's a bit more than that. It's not like you play for your club and then you go into whoever's listening to this podcast can't think about the transition or the stages in development or the pathway, like they call it now, into professional rugby. There was none.
Okay.
So I think I played for Irish 21s, and from there I got like a development contract with Ireland.
Yeah.
There was no Munster contracts. There was no Leinster contracts. There is no academy. There was one academy in Ireland that was based in Dublin, and they employed maybe 6 or 7 players. There was only 2 professional rugby players when I started off in Cork. Myself and somebody called Dominic Crotty. I suppose I was pretty lucky in a way that he was an unbelievable professional player. But we were doing crazy stuff. I remember being in the gym, trying to deadlift over 160 kgs, benching as much as we could. We had no S&C program. We had no core stability. Our diets were appalling. So I'd finish the gym session and I'd go for a carvery lunch, or I'd get a big ham, cheese salad, coleslaw, can of Coke roll, thinking that's what you're meant to have.
Yeah.
But there was only 2 of us. And then, inch by inch, step by step, day by day, Irish rugby dragged itself from the amateur era into somewhat professionalism. But when I talk about pro, I signed a pro contract in 96, 97. I wasn't really pro till 2002. So there was 4 or 5 years where we kind of wore the badge of professionalism.
Yeah.
We were nothing to do with pros. We were out socialising, we were drinking too much. Even though we were training quite hard, everything around it was just unbelievably amateur. But it was great fun, you know. It was like the try harder sessions. Instead of doing 1 rugby session, we do 2 or 3 a day. We'd be in bits by the end of the week. So we overtrained. Come Saturday, you were shattered. But there was also a fierce sense of excitement, just opportunity, laying a path for further generations. We're very lucky to be a part of it, and there was so many great memories about it. I'll give you one quick story about it. I can remember in the early days of Munster rugby, we used to train in, sometimes, obviously, the Limerick lads would drive down to Cork, or vice versa, we drive to Limerick. And we'd always go for a lunch, so we'd do 2 training sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And a lot of times we went to this place called the Tennis Village, and we'd go for a lunch there. So we'd be having carvery lunch with gravy and sauce, and then Peter Classy would put the hand up. The dessert car would be brought around from player to player. We'd be having trifle and whatever sort of apple pie and custard to be doubles, and we'd go train rugby again an hour and a half later. And the coach would be freaking at us because our skills would be bad, we'd be tired. We were fat as head to the gulls. But it was innocence, but it was great times as well, you know.
And you mentioned that you kind of got those, you had got the contract in 96, 97. And with that, you did make your Irish debut, if I'm not mistaken, in 97 against England. And is there any kind of memories you have of the lead up to the game, or during it or after?
It actually, believe it or not, I subbed for Ireland against Australia in 1996. I can remember, I think I was rooming with Alan Clark, who's now the forwards coach with Ulster at the time. And I wasn't really nervous because when you're so young, honestly, you do not appreciate it. I subbed for Ireland. I don't think I might have played once for Munster. I don't think I even played for Cork senior team at this stage. I might have been sub for Cork, Irish schools, Irish 21s, and then straight into something for Australia. And it was, I think the night before the match, suddenly dawned me that I'm playing in front of 50,000 people tomorrow. I was like, Jesus, if I make a mistake here, my family are going to be so embarrassed. I got very nervous. And it was always going to come on that day, and thank God I didn't have to, because there was no way I was ready. There was no way I was prepared for it. Especially mentally wise, I wasn't. And then, slowly but surely, the following year I came on against England. I think we lost 44-4 or 44-5 or something like that. I honestly didn't care about the score. I was obviously delighted it came on. My binding memories basically is one, with my parents afterwards, and my parents were like, "Oh, we'd love to meet a few of the players." So all the players were in the bar getting drunk. There was these you'd have committees, it was basically like a black tie affair for a charity event. It was huge. And I was thinking, we lost this match, we played really poorly, everybody's getting pissed, nobody seems to care. And then they did this tradition when you get your first cap. There was, I think, 14 players in my table. There was 7 English and 7 Irish. And the tradition was, obviously, your first cap, everybody buys a new cap a drink and downs that drink with them. So I couldn't barely pint. If I had a pint, I was pissed. I had 13 shots.
Jesus.
Mixture of wine, beer, and I was I couldn't even enjoy it. I regret it looking back. But at the end of the speeches in those days, you were presented with your cap. So I think Austin Healy got his cap the same day as me. he missed getting his cap because he was out in the porch in the foyer of the Berkeley Court getting sick into a bucket. So they asked me to come up to collect my speech. I was getting sick in the restaurant at the Berkeley Court and didn't get my cap till about 6 months later. So you can imagine the turmoil my parents must have faced.
Yeah. And just thinking and trying to visualise that from my point of view, like, do you think it was a stage of Irish rugby where the vast majority of players were kind of, you know, they were just happy to be selected, they were happy just to take part in these games and just have the kind of social banter that would come after these with these posts? Like, there didn't seem to be a huge kind of pressure from
even though we were getting paid 97, it wasn't great money in comparison to today's, but professionalism is the worst tag you could ever associate with it. We overtrained, we were knackered, we were poorly prepared, our jerseys were hanging off us. The committee members of the RFU seemed to have a better time than the players. We really weren't players. We wore the badge of professionalism without meeting any of the standards whatsoever. But it also was amazing fun. You sit down with your opposite number after games, you swap your jersey, you sit in your dressing room, you go for a pint. It really was great fun. But no, like, winning, there was no culture of winning. There was no culture of having a coach say, okay, this is how we're going to build a team. I need maybe these 12 or 13 consistent players to go through the next 2 or 3 years. We had no game plan. The team I played with my first cap, there might have been maybe 12, 13 changes to the next cap. You couldn't develop team pattern. I don't know if we even had calls. There was no defensive systems back then. So looking back, I was wondering, like, what were we doing in training? It was tough though. They were real old, hardy men. There was no skills really. I can remember Brian Ashton came into the Irish team when I was there, and he was a generation ahead. He wanted to play wide, expansive, decoy players. We had centres who couldn't pass the ball left or right. You know, it was...
So they'd be forced to carry, essentially.
Well, no, because they'd be forced to pass, but they couldn't pass. So instead of having coaches saying, okay, this Irish team is very limited, they're not that fit, but they could have some good attributes, maybe kicking, chasing, harassing, you know, a good spirit about them, we're made to play the game that was just alien to us. I was slightly different. I wouldn't say I was slightly different, but I grew up at Ron Nagara. Like, we were primary school together, secondary school together. We were not overly professional, but I used to always practice my passing. My next door neighbour when I grew up was somebody called Michael Bradley, who captained Ireland, has over 45 caps. He lived in the house next to me. I'd see him out with his brothers in the lawn and Bishopstown, passing, kicking. I had 3 brothers. All we ever did after school was passing, kicking. I'd do extra gym sessions. I'd always felt that if I did more, I'd get 1 street ahead. It kind of suited me in the early days. I think I had definitely a head start on a lot of the players. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, moving on, I suppose the main talking point really of this is your Munster career and the fact that you were one of the few people who obviously swapped Munster for Leinster. But if we could start off on your Munster career and how you thought the initial stint went, and then obviously with that, how did you deal with the transition from eventually moving on from Munster to obviously their big rivals Leinster?
Yeah, you're covering a lot in that question there, Richie. I was in Munster like 4, if not 5 years. The first few years were just the shambles of shambles you can imagine in terms of organisation. We'd be staying all over the place. We'd meet the day before some of our games. You might have a training session that night where you have to put through the entire game plan.
In one
and you might be playing like a South African team, you know, so it was crazy. But it was also, there was great characters there like Peter Clossy, Mick Galway, really hard-nosed old men. I basically kept my mouth shut, and I basically had a great fun watching the lads play. They were great characters. My early days of Munster, I can't even remember the coaches, to be honest. It was very haphazard. We weren't that successful. And then Declan Kidney, my old school coach, who coached me for 3 years in Prez, got the Munster job. He brought in a bit of consistency, a bit of selection, proper gym, really good mental coach. And you can see it just day by day by day. Things were improving. The Munster clubs were hammering the Leinster clubs, the Ulster clubs, especially in the AL. I think they won 10 years in a row. And you can just see the professionalism eking it slowly but surely. And Munster was great in those days. I never really cemented my place as a starter. I was in, I was out, and when you're in and out, it's very hard to get some sort of confidence and consistency. And then Stringer eventually took my place in Munster. I think I only started maybe 15 to 20 games, maybe 10 Heineken Cup games. I was in and out, especially when Declan Kidney took over. But there were exciting times too. You could see Munster on the way. And then I was leaving. I was like, will I stay with Munster? Stringer had my place. He was obviously a super player, brilliant passer of the game. And I sat down with Declan Kidney. Will I stay? Will I go? He obviously saying, stay, fight for your place. I guarantee you more time. But when you're not a number one in the team, I knew I had to leave. So I arrived to Leinster, and I met Mike Ruddock actually one day in Gleason's pub in Booterstown. And he was like, "Oh, Brian, welcome to Leinster. It's great to have you here." He laid out all the plans for the year. He was delighted to have me. There was a great scrum half, like a New Zealander, Stu Foster, who just left, so he was delighted. The following day, he turned up and said he's leaving to Abbey Vale.
Oh, God.
And I was like, Mike, yesterday you told me that you're delighted to have me. So I was like, what the hell have I just done?
Yeah.
I've left. It's not like leaving Munster. I left my best friends.
Yeah.
Like, the players I grew up with in primary school, in secondary school, all came through. A lot of like the current Michaels players, they were my best friends, my holiday friends, my drinking buddies, my golf buddies. Our parents were best friends growing up. I left my life to Leinster, and then all of a sudden the coach kind of half wanted me there, is gone. I was like, what the hell have I done here? This is going to be the worst. This will be the shortest professional career ever. But luckily, coach Matt Williams came in, and he was the best thing that ever happened to Leinster. He was Australian, he was confident, he was like a politician. He had charisma, he was hard-nosed, professionalism. He brought a brilliant assistant with him, Al Gaffney, went on to coach Munster. And those two pairs just revolutionised Leinster in terms of training, facilities, diet, video review. And I was hungry to learn, I was hungry to prove. Yeah. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I definitely played my best.
And with that, like when you were just, obviously moving from Munster to Leinster, was there any kind of signs of hatred or any nasty kind of comments made?
It's interesting dynamic.
It is.
I suppose I'm not the type of person. If I'm fighting for another scrum half position, I'm never going to be friends with that scrum half. So when I left Munster, and you're playing against them, that friendship kind of went out the window for a small bit. It's not like now as well where players move left, right and centre to the provinces. Prior to me moving, I don't think there was ever a player during the professional era that ever moved province. It just wasn't done. I was possibly one of the high profile players. I was capped at that stage for Ireland. It was a massive move. It got a lot of media attention. So I was delighted to... Leinster were amazing. The players were so receptive. All my best friends when I grew up outside of rugby actually moved to Dublin during the Celtic Tiger, were making good money. So I was hanging around with them. And lo and behold, the very first match I played for Leinster was down in Musgrave Park in Cork. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, for Christ's sake, could you not give me some betting in time?
Yeah.
So we went down to Musgrave Park. We even trained in Prez, my old school, the day before the game. And I was like, what's going wrong with my life? Like, what has happened here? I'm now a stranger. I was getting off the bus. There was chance, right? You cheat, traitor, piss off, back to Dublin, you traitor. Munster were in the heyday. We lost. But I played pretty well. I was happy with my first game. But going into the after-match function upstairs afterwards was just weird. I had a bit of a fight with Mick Galway in the pitch because I'm a mouthy enough person on the pitch. Ron O'Gara was given out to me for having a fight with Mick Galway. It was a surreal experience. I think my parents found it way harder.
Okay.
They were living in Cork. So my dad turned up to the match wearing a Leinster jersey, and like he was a Munster man through and through for his lot of his life, played in different clubs, they're all around West Cork. So he bought into the move and he loved it as well eventually, but I think it was tough for my parents that they probably lost a lot of friendships out of it as well in those early days.
And did they play a role in your move? No,
I don't think they did play a role.
No.
I think I'm like once I have an idea in my head, I just go through it. I don't need too much backing or not. I don't think I asked I think they would have been supportive. I rang actually Eddie O'Sullivan, who was, I think he was the Irish coach at the time, or just about, and I was like, what do you think of this move? And he was like, geez, I'm not too sure you're good enough to get off the Leinster team. And I was like, really? That was a really good insight into my future with Ireland there, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, thank Eddie, you bollocks. But I was like, sugar. And then I was like, look, I believed in myself. I was going to do it. If I didn't move, I was stuck. I was done.
Yeah.
Stringer was a superb player. And it wasn't even Stringer was such a brilliant player. Any player who got a regular time with Ron O'Gara was a brilliant player. Yeah. So when I played with Ron O'Gara for Cork for years and years, I was the flavour of the month because Ron O'Gara was so easy to play with. Conor Murray was the same. Like Ron O'Gara's win percentage, doesn't matter what scrum half stays the same. When Ron O'Gara wasn't there, his win percentage, or the muster percentage, when Stringer played with a different out half, was way less. Ron O'Gara was so pivotal in that. I think history kind of shows that a small bit as well. But no, Leinster were brilliant. I think my first day in Leinster was went to train in UCD gym.
Yeah.
I was home to my brother had an apartment in Dublin, so I moved in with him. We're in our early 20s. It was brilliant. We enjoyed the social scene of Dublin. I got lost on the way. I took the canal. I turned left instead of turning right, so I was like 40 minutes late.
Oh.
So Leinster, I arrived into the Leinster gym. It wasn't like today in the deer, like with media, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. Nobody knew I'd moved.
Yeah.
So I arrived into this Leinster gym and like Brian O'Driscoll, Shane Horgan, Reggie Carrigan, Victor Costello, all these players were like, what the hell are you doing here? And I was like, I've signed. And they're like, for who? They thought it was a training session. I was 40 minutes late. I probably wasn't the greatest. I was good enough condition. They were like, oh. But after that, they were brilliant. Except I couldn't have been more amazed how Leinster actually supported me.
That's good to hear. And it might be hard to put your finger on, but like I'm sure now it'd be far more distinguishable since we're in the pro era. But at that time and what you experienced, obviously playing for both clubs, like what was the main differences between Munster as a club and Leinster as a club?
Do you know, I've been asked that question, not of late obviously, but when I moved originally, what's the difference between Munster and Leinster? And honestly, very little. And people are always like, oh come on, there must be. Any group or sporting organisation you play with, the team has characters. It is quiet men, it's funny men, it's drinkers, it's comedians, it's shy men, it's quiet men. And both Munster and Leinster had that. When you play for a team, you develop a passion for that team. Both teams had that. I would say one thing that Leinster really had a bad attitude in terms of they had to win with style.
Yeah.
So when I was there for the first couple of years, if we didn't win by throwing the ball around or playing at all costs, it almost felt like you didn't enjoy the win. Whereas Munster, any win is a good win. I think Munster actually, or Leinster have evolved that, especially when Cheika came later, is look, winning is the most important thing in professional rugby. You must develop a balanced kicking game, hard-nosed forward play. Like they called us the lady boys in Leinster for a long time. And they probably rightly so, because we lost games we probably shouldn't have lost. But like when I arrived at Leinster in 2000, I think we won maybe 85% of our Heineken Cup games, whether home or away. Just happened to we lost some of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
But no, I would say that Leinster were determined just to play a beautiful style of rugby that probably wasn't suited to the time at that time. But no, I really don't think there was a big enough change as people like to make out or want to make out.
Yeah. And you've mentioned a few coaches there. You've mentioned Kidney, O'Sullivan, Williams, Cheika. And like thinking back over the career, like who did you basically have the best relationship with, or who, in other words, did you think?
That's an interesting question. I think having a great relationship doesn't mean you're going to have doesn't mean he's the greatest coach.
Yeah. Like
a coach's job isn't to have a great relationship with his players, it's to get the best out of them. So if somebody asked me when I was playing that you have to do a one-on-one video analysis session with Declan Kidney, I'd be like, please send me back to the medieval times to get to be a bubonic plague. It was torture. I hated it. I didn't get on with him personally. I think our personalities are very similar. It was awkward. It was tense. I hated him. I don't think he was great for my career later, but he was probably one of the best coaches I've learned from.
Yeah.
Plus, he was my school teacher. So he did translate, like, if you have a bad attitude in class, you have a bad attitude in the field. If you're unorganised off the field, you're unorganised on the field. If you're disrespectful to people off the field, you're disrespectful to your teammates, the referee on the field, and you're going to lose matches. He was a brilliant motivator. Like, I can remember playing with Declan Kidney once. We played against Connacht, and we kind of like mixed the Munster team. When I mean mixed, like we had Keith Wood playing with us, we had Mick Galway. Instead of Ron Lagar, we might have had Killian King, Jeremy Staunton, like all internationals. But for some reason before, he had us hating Connacht, thinking that they were earning more money than us. And we were like probably 100 more caps, way more well paid, but we destroyed him because we were so angry.
Yeah.
He's that ability to get the best out of his players. As a coach, individually, he was kind of poor. Probably the best coach in my term was Matt Williams. He came over from Australia, and I know Cheika gets all the praise for Leinster changing from an amateur ethos to pro ethos, but it was really Matt Williams. We were changing the back of cars in Belvedere. As a pro rugby player, we'd use the change rooms in Belvedere. We'd be hot and cold baths, but there'd be no hot water. It was bleak. He got us to join David Lloyd gym. He got us to do. I can remember actually we were doing a pool recovery, and we were so bad at swimming. Matt Williams gave us swimming lessons.
Really?
Yeah, it was appalling. Plus, we probably turned up drunk the following morning half the times as well. But he was adamant that we're going to improve standards. And he was so charismatic. We played brilliant rugby for him for 2 years. He probably just lost his way a small bit, got a bit... I don't know, I think he was looking after himself on their team a bit in the end, but he was a super coach. Gatland was interesting to work with.
Yeah.
He kind of gave me a lot of opportunities with Ireland. Didn't say much. When he said something, you kind of listened to it. Technically, very poor coach. Like, if you saw one of his training sessions, you'd be like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
But he could turn it on when he needed to do. And you always sensed something, he was holding something back or he was about to explode. And he brought great success to Ireland as well. But Matt Williams was one of the best. I can remember a story we played with Matt Williams. We beat Munster in the first ever Celtic League final.
Yeah.
Obviously won the well-known victory at this stage. We're down to 14 men. Came back against the might of Munster. And obviously this was prior to Christmas. And to say we celebrated is an understatement. We still had 2 Heineken Cup matches to go at the end of January. I think we just drank the shit out of it for
Really?
about 2 weeks. It was a disgrace. And I can remember probably 2 weeks before the Heineken Cup matches, Matt Williams put every day in January on the board, and we all just come up individually and tick how many days we drank in January.
Really?
Yeah. And he had something like DNFFJ, apologies for my language here, do not F up January again.
Jesus.
We played so poorly we didn't qualify from our group at that stage, and we should have qualified. We were outstanding. But basically, we drank celebrating that win. And I always hear Brian O'Driscoll on podcasts saying that win came too early. And it did. We played brilliant, but we weren't professional enough. And other than that, Michael Check was a great coach, hard-nosed, no bullshit, vicious. Off the field was more important than on the field. You have to carry yourself well. You have to treat your people you work with respect. But also had a few bad coaches.
Yeah.
You know, there was a really good mixture there. Michael Checker brought in the backs coach, David Knox.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that name before, yeah.
He was a real horrible person. We'd always ask him, Dave, can we do some extra passing or kicking? He was like, oh, no, sorry, I'm very, very busy. And then we'd arrive to training sessions, to our own kicking, and he'd be out there with Brian O'Driscoll and Shane Horgan and Dennis Hickey. So a lot of coaches had great time for the superstars,
Yeah.
but they really didn't have time for the average player. And that's what broke squads eventually. Matt Williams didn't have great time for the average player. And that eventually built resentment. It built like different cliques within the group, and if ever a clique came in, that was pretty much the end of that team.
Interesting. And I just like hearing that, it's crazy to think that like such a big European team like Leinster now, if you think of it, like that just would never ever happen. And obviously there was a transition between, you know, like I think from what you've said about Matt Williams is I almost feel like he was 2 or 3 years too soon for Leinster. And
Yeah,
that
he probably
essentially
was.
coaches were coming in and just basically kind of carrying on the good work he did, but also being
thing is,
aided by him.
Matt Williams came in and revolutionised Leinster. Anybody who knows him did. But the problem is, he kind of lost his way at the end. He brought in a few people who didn't work with, who were too greedy, and he pissed off to Scotland. So he signed a 3-year deal originally. After 2 years, he left, and Gary Ella replaced him. And Gary Ella was like a step back to the 1960s. We used to go up to Kylie's, maybe to have lunch. He'd be having a pint of Guinness.
Would he?
So his first day in Leinster, I arrived up to Kylie's for a bit. By the way, we were having carvery lunch, so it wasn't much better. But we'd have a session in the afternoon. I saw Gary Ella having a pint of Guinness. Another time, there was a great forwards coach called Rolly Meads, really old school scrummaging coach. And he said, look, there's a great prop playing for Trinity. Gary, will you come out on Saturday to, keep an eye on this prop? And Gary says, absolutely. So Rolly Meads arrives, I think it was about 10 minutes late, and you can't see Gary Ella anywhere. But in the corner, just by the old pavilion in Trinity there was this fella sitting like underneath a sombrero with an ice box. He was having a few tinnies sitting on a deck chair watching the match. And we're like, this is the Leinster coach. We played Biarritz in one of the most important quarterfinals we've ever played in. And we did nothing for the week preparation. Like, we didn't even look at Biarritz. Gary and we knew we were going to lose before we even entered. He was very unorganised. So that set Leinster back an awful lot. Then Declan Kinney came in. We won 7 out of 7 or 6 out of 6 in the Heineken pool. But then he pissed off back to Munster, left us in tatters.
Yeah.
And then Cheika came in. So if Cheika came in after Matt Williams, I think Leinster might have won the Heineken Cup a bit more. But, that pain was needed for Leinster to go through.
Okay. And it's a tough one. I keep asking you tough questions. So
that's
actually I kind of feel actually bad for you. But what do you see when you look back at all this, and like what do you see as the biggest accomplishment?
like I'm painting some of the funnier stories of it. I have loads of
But if you
I won
just
3
pick
senior.
one,
Like
pick one.
I couldn't name one because everything's different. You have to take it on its merits. Winning a senior cup when I was in third year was one of the most memorable experiences of my life.
Yeah.
I even remember the program of that match day. Like most of the team were in 6th year, and on their pen picture was like, David wants to go into engineering in UCC. Michael wants to do law in Trinity. It said about me, Brian wants to do well his junior cert. You know,
Yeah.
I was in third year. That was amazing. Another final that was amazing. Winning the AL with Cork Con for the first time was amazing. I was captain on the field. It was like, you know, people you grew up with in school all went to Cork Con, all won that. It was like a sense of amazing achievement.
Yeah.
Like obviously your first cap is a wonderful experience. Kind of washed over me somewhat because you're so young and naive and slightly immature. Playing for 5 years for Munster, another 6 years for Leinster. The longevity, it's not even the longevity. I think my greatest accomplishment is probably nearly every team I won was a really high winning success rate. It's not obviously down to me. I was blessed with playing with a lot of good players, but I brought a lot of intensity with that as well. And I mightn't have been the most flashiest in terms of breaking speed, but we won majority of the games we played, and that's probably the lasting legacy I would say I have.
Okay. And obviously the flip side of that coin would be a low point. And is there any particular game or period of, you know, matches or when you were in school that you just look back on and just was like, that really was the lowest?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any in school really, to be honest. I think we got the most out of what we did in school. I'd say there's a number of low points. See, low points are the best points. They really are. If you don't enjoy those the low periods are so dark in rugby that when you get to the other side, it's just like you actually even appreciate them more.
Yeah.
Like I obviously had an awful lot of injuries, and I was kind of stupid. I never told the coaches my injuries because I was so determined to play. I can remember we played against Toulouse in Donnybrook. We beat them by 45-0. I tore my bicep off the bone, ripped it. It's still ripped to this day. I didn't even tell my coaches at halftime. My bicep was basically torn in half. My arm was hanging off. I was not coming off that field. But that was like a year and a half later. Then I dislocated my shoulder partially because of the bicep. I didn't tell my coaches that either, by the way.
Did you play the full match?
Yeah, no, I was just taking off about 10 minutes to go because we're winning so well. But yeah, I was not giving my scrum half
an edge
behind me in that position. In hindsight, would that happen today? Absolutely not. If you're injured, you're looked after, you're taken care of. There's all these metrics to show if you're fatigued or not. I just wasn't giving that up. So that was probably an big regret. I played with too many injuries. Another big regret is didn't pressurise the coach enough when I wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Like now looking back, I heard that Ron O'Gara would write letters to Declan Kinney, ring him up every time. Why am I playing? Especially Eddie O'Sullivan, the Irish coach at Gatland. If the coach didn't pick me, I just said nothing. He just doesn't want me. Whereas if you actually put pressure on coaches, they're human.
Yeah.
They'll kind of get you back in there, you know. If
Exactly,
you keep on top of them, they don't want conflict. So I should have done that more. I probably just, I wouldn't say I just took the easy option. It was just, when I was younger, I was a bit shy, a bit more uncomfortable. So I never really fought that. What other lows are there? Jesus, some of the Irish games were so unprepared. It was just shambolic, but that was more me. We lost the Heineken Cup semi-final against Perpignan, which everybody slags me here about.
The elephant in the room.
I heard Brian Driscoll recently was like, nothing to do with kicking or me or anything. It was, we weren't ready. Matt Williams, who was one of the best coaches I had, I said earlier, lost the absolute plot. For 2 months in a row, we had like a 40-page booklet on Perpignan. We used to have these brilliant tactical decision makers meeting every week prior to a match, where it'd be the hooker, the number 8, the 9, 10, 15, and maybe the captain, but their captain might have been hooker. So 4 or 5 maximum. I can remember a week before the Perpignan match, we had 13 decision makers in the meeting. It lasted an hour and a half. After that, the whole squad came in. We met for another hour. We were just, it was
drained.
Paralysis by analysis. They ruined it for us. We all played poorly as a result. We should have won that. But I think Leinster needed to go through that pain as well. Munster did it before in semi-finals and finals. We weren't ready to win. We weren't mature enough as an organisation. But it's also a great experience. It's like, God, I've learned so much from that. Whether I was coaching in the future, whether I was playing in the future, whether I was just doing anything in the future.
Yeah.
You know, it was... Other than that, no, it's a great experience. Rugby's... It's like being in a fun prison for 10 years. Maybe 12 years in my case. I know prison is the wrong word, but you basically are, but it's fun. It's like you're in this excitable wonderland, and then all of a sudden, you're out of it. It's gone. There's so many good times, but you don't appreciate the good times because I would never celebrate. So... So I wouldn't celebrate, but I'd always be fearing that if I get too cocky here, next week I'm going to play crap. But then I also took the downs. I wouldn't go into a match if we lost, or into the bar afterwards if we lost. I go home.
Really? Let's go home.
I couldn't. It was all my life. I feel people would look at me going, what a loser.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was after a Cork match or Leinster match, I would not go out if we lost. I would never go up to Kylie's if we lost. People were like, what an utter failure, is nothing in his life. Whereas if I won, I'd be straight
You'd
up
be
there,
the first,
Jack the lad, yeah.
first guy at the
But that's
bar.
a terrible balance too, you know. That
It
doesn't
is,
happen
yeah.
anymore. Terrible balance. Now it's, you know, you have to have a balance. You have your friends, your family. It was all or nothing. We had nothing else.
And do you think by saying that there was such a pressure in your mind basically to win, essentially, and that like it would completely affect your mood in the next few days? Like, did you think that affected some of your, say when a big game would be on the horizon and say you didn't play your best, would you like sometimes put that down to the amount of pressure you put yourself under as an individual?
I don't think it wasn't really down to pressure. It was just down to self-worth. Like when you were involved in rugby, especially in those early days, it was professional and nothing else. Nobody had a business. Nobody was doing extra degrees. I actually did a bit at the end of my Leinster time, right? But in the early days, that was it. You trained all day and you played all day. If you failed at your job, it's not like, God, I got bad results in my Leaving Cert history last year. The entire country knows about it. It's not in the PD. It's just I know about it. It's like, that's disappointing, but we'll improve it. If you play bad, everybody knows about it. And then you get paranoid, like, this journalist never gives me a bloody break. Or even what I was going back to saying earlier, a lot of the best players used to ring the journalists and give out to them if they wrote bad. I never knew that. I would have loved to. Yeah. I've been on the phone 24/7. Geez, what are you saying about me here? You're not giving me any credit. I did think I got a small bit of, I wouldn't say harsh criticism, but slightly unfair criticism at times with Leinster because in France, a 9 who goal kicks and is reasonably successful at it is like le petit général. Yeah. Running the team. Brilliant. So I arrived up in Leinster playing 9. It was going great. It was fantastic. But we no goal kicker. I went through about 10 different out halves. And then eventually it was like Matt Williams the coach and Checker the coach and others. Will you kick? And I turned into be a reasonably good kicker. I think still 5th highest point scorer and pretty high percentage. But if that was any other... If I was a Leinster player goal kicking, I think I would have got more credit. The fact that I was just a bit of an outsider. Yeah. We can't criticise Brian O'Driscoll, so let's criticise Bomber because he missed a few kicks.
He was the go-to guy.
Yeah, and I think I might have missed maybe 2 or 3 in a couple of big games. Other than that, you still wouldn't get the credit. Whereas if I was in France, like a fella called Michelak, they would have adored you. Yeah. You know, Irish are very critical of the Irish people, I think, at times.
I think that reflects as well in the coaching nowadays. If you think about it, you don't really see any of the Irish coaches coaching the Irish provinces.
Yeah, it's. I think it's something to do with the Irish accent. We just do not praise our own. If you look at Declan Kidney, he's won the Grand Slam. Yeah, I think he's won 2 Triple Crowns. Maybe he's won the Irish Under-21s World Cup. He's been to over 10 years. He's been to 4 Heineken Cup finals, won 2. Unlike the current coach, Joe Schmidt, who obviously is the best coach probably ever, got out of his quarter final every single year for 11 years in a row. Won 2 Irish 21s, Triple Crowns, won the Irish Schools Triple Crowns, won like 4 senior cups in a row. Probably Ireland's most successful coach ever. Yeah. And is hated. Joe Schmidt is one of Ireland's best ever coaches. Didn't get out of Europe 1 year, but still won the Amlin. Won 2 Heineken Cups, never won the Grand Slam, never won the Triple Crown. Obviously, he's brilliant. But if he ran for president, I think he'd win. Wouldn't he?
Maybe.
If Declan Kidney ran, he'd be shot in the back. Hated. Eddie O'Sullivan won 3 Triple Crowns in a row, is despised. Yeah. So we obviously have something about it, the Irish mentality. I don't know what it is.
And like, I just found it strange, not to obviously dwell on the topic, but like even when, you know, like Leinster were looking for a new coach recently, and you know when Connacht were looking for a new coach, like whenever you see the papers or the media covering it, or even if you see any bookmakers, you never ever see an Irish name, no matter how good they are.
Value ourselves. That's one of the greatest things Kidney ever did when he was at Munster. He always used to say we don't believe in ourselves enough. Yeah. You know, I still think the Irish... No, I don't think the Irish coaches get a fair crack to whip. It happened in Munster and it didn't go well, so I think everybody's branded as a failure as in terms of an Irish coach as a result of that. Leo Cullen seems to be doing a great job at the moment, but no, the Irish people... Look at... who's the Kilkenny hurling coach? Brian Cody? If he was American, there'd be a stadium named after him. Yeah. There'd be a road named after him. A statue. He'd be at every single motivational self-help talk there is. He's one of, I don't know how many All-Irelands in a row. probably the greatest coach Ireland's ever had. I don't think he's ever talked about, is he?
No.
It's
not that I know
so
of anyway.
You know, we love dishing our own for some reason, which is a really bad habit.
And obviously, I have to ask, was there ever a stage in your career where you thought maybe, you know, Leinster's not doing it for me, maybe Munster's not the club for me, and did you ever think maybe I should just chance my arm? And like, because nowadays you look at Johnny Sexton, you look at Madigan, there is an option now to actually go abroad, and I'm just wondering, was there ever a chance in your career where you thought, hang on, I've just been offered a chance to play in the UK or play in France?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, but to be honest, all I ever really wanted to be was one club man. So I always wanted to go from school to club to province and then possibly retire, but obviously professional rugby changes all that. So I was in Cork for most of my career. I loved that. I didn't really want to leave Munster. Obviously, you're moving your life. So when I left Leinster, obviously that's a big enough transition. I heard Ron O'Gara saying actually recently that it's only really the edge fringe players that can move province, and there's probably some merit in that. Like, would you imagine Brian O'Driscoll playing for Munster? Would Mick Galway play for Leinster? Would Simon Best play for Connacht? Or Rory Best?
Look at Robbie Henshaw. He left after they won a league.
Yeah,
Connacht.
Maybe leaving Connacht isn't as big a stain as
True,
as much.
maybe,
but
yeah.
By and large, it's mostly just on the fringe players. I think it's a math, and even for them, for me, was the biggest shift ever. So I never wanted to become just a mercenary. It just never suited my mentality. So yeah, when I was finishing up with Leinster, I went over to Bristol for a few days. Again, I went over there. I think the coach was an ex-English scrum half called Richard Hill. So I went over there for a bit of an interview, a bit of a semi-trial. Not a trial, but I can remember he asked me to bring my boots over, so I did a passing session with him. Yeah. So remember now I'm 30, just about 30, about 100 Leinster caps. Maybe I was been involved in like maybe 25, 30 Irish games, 9 caps, 40, 50 Munster games. Pretty well experienced. Yeah. He's trying to teach me how to coach passing. So I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, and his passing technique I felt was crap as well. I was like, get me the hell out of here. They offered me, I think, 70,000 sterling over 2 years. I was going on 30. I hadn't finished my college degree. I had to go back and finish that. And I was like, all right, in 2 years' time, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I have to go back. Where am I going to go back to? I was like, let's just pack it in. Yeah. Pretty much, like, my body was, I had lost a bit of speed. It wasn't as fit as it used to be. It was like, here, look, I had a good innings. Let's get on with life. And I knew life transition was going to be pretty bleak. Well, bleak / fun at times as well. But no, I said, no, that's it. Time to move.
And was like that was the moment where you just made up your mind. You were like, you know, the body's had it. I've had my time. Or what was it still a...
No, my time was actually my last... I actually played... I was on like a development / training contract for Leinster or Munster my very last year. Yeah. Where I was basically finishing my college degree in UCC, and then I was going to do the Masters in Education, become a teacher the following year. So it wasn't really that professional. It was the year before my last 5 months in Leinster. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Yeah. Michael Check, I was injured. I actually tore my other bicep as well. So I was kind of injured. And then when I was coming back, Michael Check had me third choice. In those days, you were playing Leinster A matches. And they're not like Leinster A matches today, which are kind of glamorous. Yeah. They're all up-and-coming players, mad, keen to show and press. There's great opportunities. It was a mixture of random club players who were useless. Yeah. Some young academy players. And then disgruntled, bitter people like me who aren't on the team.
Who did want to be there.
Who didn't want to be there. Basically, you're like, Christ, get me back into the big arena, please. Yeah. But I remember we played in Clonwilliam. And think of this, like a dirty, mucky pitch in Clonwilliam. Grass up to your knees. Dung from horses all around the place. And I was playing against Christian Cullen. He was just coming back from injury from Munster. And I can remember there was this young hooker for Leinster. I can't remember his name. Absolutely ripped Christian Cullen apart in the spear tackle. And I can remember just watching him while the play was going on. This is the greatest fullback probably the world has ever seen for New Zealand, right? He had horrific injuries. He got speared in his head by this random nobody from Leinster hooker in the middle of a shitstorm. It was snowing, sleet, miserable, with like cow shit on the side of his leg. And he got up. He kind of stood around and looked around the place and was like, where has it all gone wrong? Yeah. And I was looking at him and I was thinking, where has it all gone wrong?
Touche,
right? So I was like, Christ, what's like? And I was still on good money. I was earning a decent 11, but I knew it was like once I was training with the randomers in Leinster. It wasn't like it's team spirit, it's rotation squad. It was just that squad. I was like, all right, time to get on with life and move on. So I went back home. Actually, I was going to go back to Munster on a two-year contract.
Yeah.
So Decky rang me, hello, Brian.
Yeah.
Remember me?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. Well. But I have a 2-year contract for you here from Munster. Will you come home? And I was like, brilliant. I was going to go home anyway. So I was like, geez, Decky's come through for me after all the years he dropped me and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, what a nice guy. And then he didn't call me for 5 months.
Oh, God.
And I kept ringing up and no answer. And I was like, eventually I got through to the manager and he was like, sorry, we've given you your contract. And we split it in half and gave it to 2 young people. I was like, were you not meant to tell me about this?
Yeah.
And I was like, look, I kind of didn't care at that stage. I was going back home. I was going back being player coach for my old team, Highfield, where I started.
Yeah.
They were paying me really good money. Great money to go through college, pay my mortgage, all that sort of stuff. And then clever Decky, like, will you come back and I'll give you a development contract instead? I really, really wanted to tell him to F off because I never really respected him in terms of just the way he treated me the last few years. But I was like, let's just use Munster here.
Yeah.
I was like, they'll pay me, bits and pieces, not massive money compared to what I was on, but solid money. I'll get my degree. I'll finish that year out and move on. So my last ever game of professional rugby was against Newport Gwent Dragons in Musgrave Park, where it all started. We were 45-0 up or something, and Declan put me on for the last 2 minutes. So after a career which stand pretty, made a fair contribution to Irish rugby.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
2 minutes against Newport, and into the dressing room afterwards. No speeches, no nothing. On my boots, left. That was it. Never played pro again. So when people see Brian O'Driscoll in the Aviva Stadium,
I know,
and getting the flags, that is not reality.
Yeah,
it's far from it. Most players don't even know they're going to be retired. It's just tough luck. I knew I was leaving, so I was back into UCC. I was back into my 3rd year history and geography in college. I was back in my local club. I was back in my own house I had rented out. So I had some semblance of what direction I was going in. But it was still a tough transition, that's for sure.
And you say transition there, and obviously, with the events there, that happened a few weeks ago, and it's such a big part of rugby now is pros becoming ex-pros and just not knowing how to fill that gap or fill that void of constantly being in a, like as you've pointed out, like you start in that bubble when you're a young kid and you're surrounded by all your mates. You go on to maybe club, then you go into pro. And for 20, 25 years, you could be with the same people you grew up with, or if not, you're with the same people every day. You know what you're going to be doing every day. And then, as you said, suddenly, just like that, it's done. How did you actually make the transition as easy as possible? Or was it just...
I didn't make it easy. It was very, very tough. It's
tough to make.
You go from... I was on so many great tours. I went to South Africa, and it was like the great amateur / professional tours. The crack was just mighty. I went to Tonga and Samoa. Another beautiful tour. I remember we're in Tonga and we played Tonga. The day after the match, we got to go to this pristine paradise island. Like, take out a boat, the whole squad. And there was a rumour going during the days, stay until the last boat leaves. Stay until the last boat leaves. But there was only certain people who got it, and I got it because I was kind of good crack and didn't mind an old pint or two. So eventually 2 boats leave. This is like 6 o'clock. There was an impromptu piss up on this Tongan island, like it was Rona Garra's birthday or something. So about 12 of us arrived back then, about 11 o'clock that night. Eddie O'Sullivan ate through us.
Really?
But it was a great experience, we loved every minute of it. And then you go from that to earning big money, to being on media coverage, TV coverage, to zero. Done. So I woke up one morning after my last game. And actually, I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and I was like, I have nothing to do. And then it was like, no, Brian, you have nothing to do. Like, I didn't have a job, I didn't have my degree finished. My money from from professional rugby had stopped. I had like 4 or 5 investments in properties. How am I going to pay these mortgages if the rents don't come in? I was way over mortgage, way over leverage. I was like, what am I going to do today? So for about 3 months, I was like, I'll play a bit of poker. So I played a few tournaments of poker, got pretty good. Went over to Singapore, played a tournament where it was a €5,000 buy-in. I didn't pay the €5,000. I paid this like €200 called Satellite.
Okay. And
it was 200 players in. The top 3 players get all expense package to Dubai, Singapore. So I went over there. Obviously didn't win it, unfortunately. About $1 million for first prize. Tony G, the famous poker player, won it. But then I was like, I can't be a poker player here. I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, I'll just go back and finish my degree. So I went back, finished my degree, and the following year I applied to do my HDIP. I didn't get it because my degree wasn't a good enough standard, because I just left it. And when I was in my early years of rugby, I was like getting pass levels and missing out exams, so I was useless. So I didn't get my degree. So I went back to my old school press, and I did a bit of what you're doing, Richie. Bit of bluffing around, bit of hanging around.
Learning your trade.
I was basically learning my trade, yeah. I was driving the minibus for tennis teams. So remember, I was going from professional and international to driving the minibus in the school within 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's...
And I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was driving, but then I got into coaching the juniors team there. I was coaching Rory Scanlon, who's now in with Munster and Leinster, or Munster and Ireland. I was supervising some classes. I wasn't teaching, but I was just in there supervising. I was supervising Declan Kidney's son. And I was like, geez, this really has come full circle. Declan Kidney used to teach me, now I'm supervising his son in class. And then I got enough merits that I got my dip the following year. But it's not even that. It's when you talk about the transition, it seems like there that I had a jolly all the time. I wouldn't go to a match, basically. I couldn't go to a Leinster match. I couldn't go to a Munster match. I can remember going to a Munster match versus Leinster with my dad and my brother in Thomond Park. And I was like, what am I doing here? I felt embarrassed to be there. People were like, what do you mean? I felt embarrassed. People would be... this is my head thinking now. Oh, this fella, he used to play rugby. He's now nobody. He's nothing. He's nothing. He's like, oh, he used to be average or decent enough for rugby. Like, what's he even doing here? He should be out there playing. And I can remember watching Dennis Hickey, Jonathan Sexton, Contepomi, all these players that I used to play with for 6 years, go through blood and sweat and tears with, out there playing. And I was there on the side of my dad. I left at half time. My dad was like, what's wrong? I was like, I just can't watch that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I went to the game then for about 4 or 5 years. Then I got into coaching. Then I get into teaching. And then eventually, many years later, you kind of like, she's had a great career.
Yeah.
That was a great time. But those 6 or 7 years, you have a feeling of certainly depression. I was definitely depressed for a couple of years. Not badly, as in terms of like, but it was like a loss of identity, loss of self-worth. What am I good at? What have I achieved? Was it even pointless playing rugby? So then you're like, maybe I shouldn't have played. I wish I didn't play, maybe. God, why actually was it? Damn, I wish I didn't have to play rugby. I wish I was like every other 31-year-old, 32-year-old who's stable in a good job, settled, happy. I was like, fucking nothing here. I'm finished. I'm broke. I had a property in England I had to sell. I lost 70,000 sterling. I had another property in Cork I had to get rid of. Lost money out of that. And then eventually just things... I think if you believe in yourself and you treat people well, things started to turn. You know, I got a bit more confidence. I really enjoyed teaching. I felt I was good at it. Got into coaching. Felt I was good at inspiring younger people. Made some really good financial moves. And then slowly but surely you kind of come out of that cloud.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see back in it. But it's still not easy. I still don't enjoy going to games.
True.
Not at all.
That is interesting. And I've actually read even snippets of interviews where people just say it's so tough to... You know, I remember reading quotes from, say, Lewis Moody, the former English flanker, and he was saying it was unbearable to go back to Twickenham when he was arguably in the prime of his career. But injury took that away from him. I know it was different circumstances with you, but regardless of how your career ends, it's just the fact that kind of, you know, that lift, that energy you get from playing is never going to be replicated again. No,
it's not. And that Brian O'Driscoll fairy tale ending it's kind of ruined it for so many other people, I think.
Yeah.
Because people are like, it's almost like you get all these magical dinners in England and Dublin, a bit like O'Gara had as well. You know, you have hundreds of people giving you a testimonial. You're getting huge financial payments. You're getting your tax back. Whereas the reality is for most people is they haven't invested their money wisely. Yeah. I was lucky enough, my dad was a bank manager. I had some bad investments, but by and large was pretty cute. I bought a few properties at a really low time, came out of it okay. But most people are indebted, they're really struggling. They have no sense of identity. They're probably doing a job they bloody hate. Like, I'm privileged to be working in St. Michael's College, that's for sure. And it's actually, believe it or not, teaching's very similar to professional rugby player. I have an itinerary I have to do every week.
Yeah.
I have to be at 11 o'clock on a Monday. I know where I'm meant to be. But I also get great time off. I'm kind of my own boss. You know, Tim has pretty much a laissez-faire attitude in terms of if you do a great job, he'll let you do your great job and gives you the confidence to explore yourself, your own teaching style. Whereas if I had a 9-to-5 job, I honestly think I'm not too sure what happened. I know I bumped into on Redden recently. He was like, half the people in my company know I'm only there because I played Leinster and I played for Ireland. That's a terrible thing to have.
Yeah.
You know, you're always kind of proving people wrong. But it's a tough transition, that's for sure, yeah. Some people, like Paul Wallace, being there getting sick, other lads be almost crying, the captain be roaring. You're never going to replicate that, and it was just so special. Going in tour, I can remember going to France for the very first time playing for Munster. I think it was 96. We might have lost to Toulouse by 60 points. 60 points. But we didn't care. Getting on a trip to go to France to play a match. We're on the same tracksuits. The excitement, like the crowd shouting Christian Califano, Frank Turner, these amazing props. We didn't care. We were in the function afterwards. These marquee French bands sucking down the wine, having great experience. You're earning great money. You're all I ever wanted to do was train. That was more enjoyment than playing the matches for me. Out practicing, passing, kicking, loving the competition with my teammates, loving the challenge. It's a wonderful, great life. But there's also tough parts of it as well. And even now, more so because of media, just the media.
Social media.
Yeah, you're just so exposed. And what I also find these days is, even when Jimmy Goffert was in Leinster, he was targeted by the media, by certain people on Twitter. And once one person gets in that agenda, it's just like a steamroller and you cannot stop it. They got rid of him, they got rid of other people. It's so dangerous. You know, so it's...
Well, they need a scapegoat. Once Sexton left, they were like, no one's ever going to be able to replace him. And once Goffert came in, they were like, regardless of the results he puts in, we are not going to accept him. And
it's a bit like O'Gara left as well. There was a few scapegoats there.
Yeah.
And it takes a couple of scapegoats, and then eventually they find somebody like, life has to move on, so they'll take him. But it's tougher. Like, you need an awful lot of mental strength now.
Yeah.
Like, we're outside most matches drinking and socialising. You can't do that anymore.
No.
You know, but look, there's positive and negatives. It was a great experience. You don't fully appreciate it during the time. And before you know it, it's like, sugar, this is over.
Bang, it's done.
Yeah, and you go from good money to zero money.
And losing table tennis matches.
Haven't lost many of these table tennis matches yet, thank God. And the competition's not great in Michael's.
Oh, well, we'll see. Well, anyway, before we finish and wrap this up, I'm going to ask you a few quick fire.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Quick fire questions that...
Worst people I've ever had, Richie Allen.
That was first on the list, so good to get that one out of the way early. But no, I'm just going to, just polish them off. Don't even think about your...
Absolutely, let's go,
answer.
Richie, come on.
So, your favourite food?
Sushi.
Favourite stadium you ever played in?
Just in Toulouse, the local stadium there, Stade Michelin, I think it's called. Okay. Or I'm not sure what the name is, but playing in Toulouse was a great experience.
The toughest player you ever played against?
Trevor Brennan. And that's in training where he kicked the shit out of us.
Well, that still counts. Would you rather a night in or a night out?
Out.
Would you rather a bath or a shower?
Shower. What
would your favourite film of all time be?
Shawshank Redemption.
What is your favourite band, musician?
God, my taste in music is absolutely appalling. If I had to go for one, it'd be Don McLean.
Best scrum half in World Rugby currently?
Conor Murray.
Lions tour this summer? New Zealand or the Lions?
Lions. Lions.
And last but not least, who do you predict to be lifting the Champions Cup trophy in a few months' time?
I actually, even though I'm from Leinster and I support Leinster and I'd even like Munster to win it, I really would like Claremont to finally do it. I think they deserve it, but if they get an away draw, I don't think they'll win. So I think the momentum is with Munster, but Leinster have just so much quality. If I had to put money in it, Leinster at the moment, they're just flying and they're brilliant to watch.
Okay, that's a fair shout. Anyway, that's pretty much wraps it all up. I want to thank you, Brian, for being on the first episode, and hopefully not the last.
Hopefully the last.
Hopefully not the last episode of Ralland's Rant. But anyway, I want to thank you.
Okay, come on, Richie.
Hearing your stories.
Hopefully it's good. Well, look, the reason we did it, for me anyway, was there's a lot of Michael's players going through this process in the moment. We're very lucky. An awful lot of great coaches here have developed a lot of talent. And they just need to know that have a balanced perspective, have a balanced life when you become a rugby player. There's more to it than just the glamour.
Super. Okay. Thanks a million.